begin transmission, and may the 4th be with you. It's not every year that we get our show to air and record on official Star Wars Day. So here we are. What great coincidence it is to talk about new Star Wars and about what we're doing with Star Wars on the day that it's actually Star Wars Day. So I'm welcoming the full crew back in action after I was gone for a few weeks. We got Milton and we got Ben. What's going on, Milton?
What's going on, guys? I'm glad to be back on the podcast, ready to talk some Star Wars. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to watch the episodes this week because of real life getting in the way. However, my role tonight is to just be inquisitive and ask some questions. I do know what happened slightly in some of the reviews that I've seen, but hopefully you guys are able to convince me to watch these next episodes whenever you give your explanations. But other than that, though, Star Wars Day is here. I was able to see Revenge of the Sith in theaters last week, which was glorious. Yep. But yeah, like it was nice to be with a group of people that love Star Wars as much as I do. But other than that, I'm glad to be back on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you got to see the Revenge of the Sith because that's what I actually wanted to open with because I know Ben's seen it and I've seen it, so we can actually get a lot of your input off the front of the show as well as the questions you might have for the latter half of the show. But how's it going, Ben? May the 4th be with you, man.
Yeah, may the 4th be with you guys. I'm glad to be back on the show. It's been a crazy busy week with family stuff, and everybody knows on here that I'm going to be moving soon, getting the house all around, getting the home gym set up, all that sort of stuff. So it's been a crazy week, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm excited to get back on here to talk Star Wars, and of course, like you mentioned, we have to talk Revenge of the Sith for a few at least because that movie came out and broke records. I mean, it made 43 million. I mean, it made for context. Everyone, if we keeping up with pop culture and media right now, Sinners is popping off right now in the theater. And last weekend it made 45 million. Revenge of the Sith only made 2 million less than a brand new hit movie. Like that tells you right there, all you need to know how popular that movie and how much people still beloved the Star Wars George Lucas made, and the actors and the appreciation for all the people involved with that movie.
Yeah, it is something else to see those numbers exactly as high as they are. It's just a success, and you gotta wonder, like, all right, it's just free money for them. They're not advertising this thing. They're not doing anything new with it. It's just, let's put this movie in the theater, and it is a shame that it wasn't able to be out longer because, I mean, come on, like, it's May the 4th. Why is it out of theaters? I don't know if this is official or if it's just rumor, but like rumor or whatever has it that Disney pulled it so that Thunderbolts could make more money, which I love that movie, by the way. I seen it yesterday. Absolutely, Marvel's back. But I don't know if it was the right call to pull the Star Wars movie just to get that movie to make a few more million, because I can imagine there's a lot of people that'd be like, like even my mom today was like, I bet you there's like Star Wars movies playing on TV and stuff. So I mean, people would love to watch Star Wars movie on Star Wars Day. So there you go.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I would say I agree with that statement. I think they could have played it for another maybe week or two. Because I mean, and listen, I don't mind jumping into that conversation now about the event itself. But like, to piggyback off what you just said about Thunderbolts, I haven't seen it yet. I heard it's doing great. Obviously, Sinners has been out the last couple weeks, but Revenge of the Sith, I went on literally a Tuesday, last Tuesday, and the theater was packed.
Yep.
On a Tuesday. No one goes to movies on Tuesdays unless they want to get the discounted prices, because most theaters do those on Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. This movie was packed like it was an opening night. And, I brought my fiance with me, and I told her, because she's seen the movies on Disney Plus on a flat screen. A lot of fans who are new to it have seen it that version, never seen it on a movie theater. I remember seeing this movie May of 2005 with my little brother Chris, who I took him to that movie for the first time, and just being in that environment again was just as magical as it was 20 years ago. The movie still holds up. It looks great on the big screen. The sound is perfect. It didn't fall off for me. It felt like it was a movie that was made literally in 2025. This should tell you right there, like the prequel trilogy and the prequel era is probably way more over than the original trilogy era, unfortunately. I mean, I'm not saying that those shade or nothing. I love that OG stuff, but the prequel series, I don't know, man. A lot of fans love that movie, and it still holds up till this day. And I'm an Empire Strikes Back guy, but
Yep.
Revenge of the Sith is literally probably 1B, maybe 1A on certain days.
Oh yeah, I was actually watching, which I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about in the upcoming weeks when there's no Star Wars to talk about that's new. But highly recommend everybody listening, watching. You guys, I know you'll watch it, but the Light and Magic documentary has,
Mm-hmm.
it's heavily. There's three more episodes. They're all an hour each. And it's heavily based on the prequel. Each episode is basically either Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, or Revenge of the Sith, and like just everything with Revenge of the Sith, and everything with George Lucas. Like he pioneered digital filmmaking. Like he literally went to Sony and was like, "No, you guys have to figure out a way to make it so that way we don't have to worry about film anymore. We could just edit things on the fly on the computer. Don't have to worry about the thingies." And everything was so much clearer when they put it on digital. Like they noticed all these, like they still made models. Like people don't realize this, but the prequel trilogy has more physical models than the original trilogy combined. You know, it's just like it's an insane amount. Like the way they designed, like the prop makers designing Mustafar, and they were piping in this material with LEDs that backlit it, so it looked, and they had cork flowing through it. Like it's awesome because they're telling you how they made the whole set and everything like that. But it's a way that George Lucas, if it wasn't for him to pioneer an Attack of the Clones digital and all that sort of thing, none of that would ever look nearly as good as it does now. So I thought that was great because I was able to watch those and then literally watch Revenge of the Sith. I was like, oh, this is a great pairing right here.
Oh yeah, that's perfect timing, man. I mean, like yeah, I don't know. It's a perfect week for them to like release that documentary right as they were, having Revenge of the Sith and everything, and yeah, like it's awesome seeing people get out to see this movie again. Like like you said, Milton, our theater that we went to, and I live in small town Ohio over here, and it was completely packed and sold out. And the cool thing is, like, our little theater actually had, I mean, I didn't know this until after the fact, and I don't even really have Star Wars anything to cosplay anyway, so it would have been irrelevant to me. But they were having like a little Star Wars cosplay competition before the movie started, and I was like, oh dang, Chris would have been perfect for this. But the person that won it, like, being around here, like in a small town, like, I don't expect to see much, like in terms of cosplayers, but there was a guy there. I'm not kidding you guys. Like he literally had like a great Darth Maul costume, and it was like the Darth
Ooh.
Maul, the Tatooine costume too, with like the hood,
Oh,
the more like flowing robes and stuff, and like and he only had the half lightsaber, and it was so sick too, and like he had one of those old school, because the guy probably was in his 40s, I'd guess, but he had one of those old school, like those like the rubber mask, like that
yeah.
were real, that were like
I
$150
had
20 years
one of
ago.
them.
Yep, he had one of them, and I was like, dude, this is so sick. But yeah, like our experience was really good too, and like the coolest part about it to me was the fact that like when we were coming out, the best part honestly was like there was like a dad and mom, probably like in our age range, like in their mid to upper 30s. They had probably like an 8 and maybe a 10-year-old, and the dad was like, what do you guys think of it? And like both the kids were like so excited, and they were like, we loved it, and like they were talking about I heard the girl say her favorite part was the part with like the fire mountain and all that stuff when they were fighting and everything. And I'm like, dude, this is like the best part about Star Wars stuff. And like, that's what reminds, when you see stuff like that, that reminds you like all this like internet arrow throwing between people is just fake, because it's like, you see this stuff in real life and it's like, all right, what are we doing here?
Yeah, that's that is a fan community in a nutshell. It's like we get together in person, we're all nice and all. As soon as we're online, we're just not all of us, but just like people become belligerent and just jerks. So unfortunately, that'll never change. It's just going to be a thing forever. But as far as from my experience, I'll tell you this: this was unique. So I had a friend of the show. He's Pete. He lives in my area. He also is the host of Around the Galaxy, and he invited me on his podcast earlier in the week. So that was awesome. But he was like, "Oh yeah, I seen this in 40X." I said, "Where'd you see it?" "Oh, you have to. It's like the closest place is 40 minutes away in Warrington, Pennsylvania." So I was like, you know what? It's Star Wars. It's worth the drive. So I drove girlfriend and I all the way there. And it was an experience that was very unique, but also something I'll never do again. Because if anybody is not aware of what 4D is, it's basically all your senses and everything are stimulated. You got visuals, you got like actual water hitting you. Your seats are moving like a freaking Star Tours, like literally, like the seats are on hydraulics. They're lifted. They're shifting left, shifting right, up, forward, back, and it was really cool at first because you're, obviously in the Battle of Coruscant. So it worked really well there because you feel like you're on Star Tours, just like going around with Jedi Obi-Wan and Anakin around those separatist ships. Explosions are happening, and they even have like vibration seats, but they also have these like back bar things that kind of like hit you in the back. Not like hard, but you could tell like if somebody explodes or gets hit by a lightsaber, like that thing in your back would go off. There'd be little compressors in the back of the headrest, so like it'd hit you with air. If like the ships are firing lasers, it's gonna and then it would be like spraying water at the Kashyyyk battle. Like there would be like the Wookiees going by, it'd splash the screen, and then water would shoot at your face. And then at one point, like you're on Mustafar, and smoke literally starts like going up in the air by the screen itself in the front of the theater, and then all of a sudden you start smelling like basically like campfire smell, and you're on Alderaan, and it smells like fir trees and like all this crazy stuff. But it would have been really, really good if they didn't do the hydraulic seat crap like the entire time, because by the end of it, and it's like pretty violent, like when it shakes at certain points, it's like boom, 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 boom. It's like I had a beer and I couldn't even drink the beer for like half the movie because I couldn't find a moment of peace to just like sit there and sip at this thing without it, getting all over myself. So it was good, but I think they need to tweak that to be a little bit more in moderation. Like maybe only have it in the beginning, middle, and end and turn it off or something, because as I said, it was fun in the beginning, but it became very exhaustive towards the end. So that's what I mean when I say it was good to try once, but I will never be doing that again.
Yeah, that's understandable, man. Like I was telling you in our group chat, I've never experienced anything like that before. I mean, that's a crazy experience, that's for sure. Like the closest thing I've had to it is like, our theater here is one of those Dolby Atmos theaters where like it's like moving sound. Mm-hmm. So the opening sequence, since you were talking about that, the opening sequence of the movie, like when the ships fly over, you feel, you hear Anakin and Obi-Wan Starfighter coming behind you, and then you feel it. You feel it because like when they fly, the audio is behind you, and as it passes over your head, you feel a vibration that goes through your seat, like the ship moving past you, like it's moving audio. So like that's the closest thing I've done to anything like that is just like our local theater here. But other than that, like I've never been to a 4D theater.
Yeah, I mean, those things are all over like theme parks, and those things are good, right? It's like a 5-minute experience. Like they could be crazy because you're only on there for 5 minutes. But when you persist that thing for 2 hours and 20 minutes, by the end of it, we were like, all right, I think we're ready to leave, unfortunately. Yeah. And then I went and I seen Thunderbolts last night. I was sitting in a nice leather recline chair, and I was like, oh, this is the life. No seats are moving right now. This is great. So yeah, it was a novelty thing for sure, and that's about it. But jumping into other things happening around the galaxy, we have May the 4th celebrations all over. I mean, there's discounts on different different action figures and toys and all that, and obviously Disney Plus put up Tales of the Underworld. So I'm going to give my brief little synopsis without really giving too much away. So I did watch all 6 episodes. The interesting about the episodes is I watched the first episode of the Size Venturous one at Celebration Japan 2 weeks ago. Then I ended up watching the first 2, one of them being the one I already seen of Ventress, in Fortnite, which was an experience, let me tell you that, because I'm in Mos Eisley, I'm playing as my clone trooper, and I took screenshots, but apparently like Disney did something where like the screenshots turned blank on my computer, like they did something with the PC, so unfortunately I wasn't able to share them on the podcast tonight. But it was cool because it's like you have like a legit movie theater in a video game, and you could go around, you could like get into different costumes, you can go sit in chairs and then watch it full screen. You can go to the bar and see it on the screen. It is like what we learned earlier, like 6 months ago or a year ago or something, that Disney like basically invested like I think $500 million in Epic Games or something like that. I'm seeing that paying off in dividends now. Like the integration of Star Wars in that game right now is absolutely insane, but I'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, I watched the first 2 episodes of Tales of the Underworld through a video game in Fortnite, which is absolutely nuts. And then I watched the other 4 remaining things earlier this morning before work. But what I will say is the Asajj Ventress stuff is cool, but like there's stuff that's hinted at that never really gets fully satisfied to the point where it does lead me to feel a little bit underwhelmed. It really does feel like they're setting up for yet another spin-off series, whereas this was set up as a spin-off series, but there's just not much resolution to this as I would have liked. So that for me, maybe my expectations were a little high, but I mean, this is something we knew was coming for a while. And then Cad Bane, I don't know. I feel like I've just never been the biggest Cad Bane character. And from what I gathered, like, this didn't really do much to, like, unpeel more layers of the character. Like, he's still a gruff and tough bounty hunter. Yeah, we learn how he starts, but, like, I thought there'd be a little bit more to it. I thought, yeah, it looks really cool. Like, people are going to say that it's so cinematic and it's so great because it's just beautifully done, but other than visually, I don't think there's much substance to the story itself. And then overall, you call the thing Tales of the Underworld. 50% of it isn't even about the Underworld. So maybe they needed a better title because I'm sorry, but you can't account Asajj Ventress on a desert planet dealing with stormtroopers and whatnot as underworld activity. Whereas with the Cad Bane stuff, it actually was dealing with mobsters and gunslingers, like that actually works. So I mean, maybe a little bit misleading on many fronts with this Tales, but so far it's my least favorite Tales, unfortunately. But we will be revisiting each one of those characters' 3-episode arcs in the future. Once Andor's finished, we're going to circle back and we're going to give our good old deep dives into each of those character 3-episode arcs. So hey, I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about those.
Yeah, hopefully it's good, man. I haven't watched it yet. I didn't even know they were releasing it this week, honestly. But I'll have to check it out when I get some time. But like, I will ask this: what's the time period of that story for both Cad Bane and Ventress?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because with the Ventress, they did not make it clear where it is. I can't really. Okay, so. Put it this way, I don't know if it's before Bad Batch or after Bad Batch.
Okay.
And maybe I'll have to watch it again because we know she appears in the last season of Bad Batch, and she's kind of training, not Ezra, but Echo. No, not Echo. Gosh, somebody save me here.
Omega.
Omega, yes, the other clone. So I don't know if it's before or after that. As far as Cad Bane, that one's very easy. It's like him as a kid, then him as a teenager, then him as a young adult. So that one's very fairly. But we don't know like the age of what a Duros is or anything like how even old he is. But that doesn't really matter because the Cad Bane one is more in a vacuum. It's really just dealing with the same planet the whole time, and we never even got the name of the planet. I'm assuming it's Duros or whatever the Duros home planet is, because there's a lot more Duros there, which leads me to believe that. But anyway, yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that story in a few weeks' time. All right. So speaking of Fortnite, yes, as I mentioned, I've been having a blast in Fortnite right now. I would strongly urge anybody that even has any kind of gaming skills and is a Star Wars fan to just download it, because it's available to download on Android. Apparently, it's coming back to iOS because Epic Games was like suing Apple, or Apple was suing now. I forget what the heck happened, but for 5 years you couldn't play Fortnite on the phone, or you had to go through like a backdoor through a browser to play it on iOS. But anyways, it's literally available on everything but the kitchen sink, when it comes to Fortnite. So go ahead, check it out, because they literally made the game into like Battlefront 3, or as close as Battlefront 3 is, because they have Star Wars weapons and only Star Wars weapons. They have Star Wars music playing when you enter and all that sort of thing. They have Star Destroyers, Death Star in the background. They have like NPC clone troopers running around next to Republic gunships, and the same thing with First Order. And then they have like a samurai Darth Vader running around NPC. It's just absolutely fun. Like, Plagueis pops up as a holocron, and he starts talking about Darth Plagueis the Wise and all this crap. I'm like, they are so inside baseball with this update. I absolutely love it. And it's literally the main focus of the whole season, which I think is at least a month. And they have an entire battle pass that unlocks a whole bunch of cool Star Wars stuff. So there you go. I mean, I can't recommend it enough. I know there's a bad rap for the older generation when it comes to Fortnite, but hey, I say give it a try. I'm just playing zero build mode, and I feel like I'm owning noobs. They must be like doing like some kind of like skill-based matchmaking or something, because I'm just like, I got number one, and I almost got number one a few times. Like, I don't know. I can't believe that I'm actually, these youngings are usually the ones that own me. So anyway, I've been happy with that. I unlocked my Death Star umbrella for getting number one. So that's how I drop in with my Wookiee, with the little umbrella, and he's walking around with a lightsaber. It's just absolutely fun. It's absolutely fun. That's the only time I play Fortnite, is like this time every year. But there you have it. We're going to get into the show proper. First of all, we are available on any podcast streaming app. We put this podcast out around every Monday or Tuesday, upload it, but we're also available live every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Here we go. Also, there's a lot of releases this week. Besides Tales of the Underworld, there were a lot of comics, so strap yourselves in, because this could take like literally a whole minute of me just ranting through all these comics. All right, so first of all, we have The High Republic Adventures number 17. We also have The High Republic Adventures, The Battle of Iriadu, which is a one-shot comic. We also have Hyperspace Stories, Poe Dameron Codebreaker number 1. That's issue 1 of 4, I believe. We also have the adaptation of The Rise of Skywalker, issue number 3. We also have The High Republic, Fear of the Jedi number 3. And then, if that wasn't all, we also had Free Comic Book Day, literally yesterday, the first Saturday of May of every year. They have Marvel, Dark Horse, IDW, and the rest of the crowd participating in just giving fans free comics. And those free comics were both Star Wars, no, it wasn't the High Republic, Marvel, Star Wars, Free Comic Book Day edition, which contained a story about Vanya, the caretaker of Vader's castle from Rogue One, that old shriveled up looking dude with the robe that's taking care of Vader when he's in his tank and all that kind of stuff. You also have the brand new Star Wars line with Luke Skywalker. That's also a miniature story in there that takes place after the Battle of Jakku. And then we also had a Qui-Gon and Tensu Run story, which leads into the next issue of Jedi Knights. We also had the Young Jedi Adventures Free Comic Book Day edition, which is, if you've ever watched that show, they do a very faithful job of making it feel just like the show, in like a deleted episode or something like that. So there you go. There's a lot of stuff for you to spend your money on, or basically no money on, because those are free comic book days you could have gotten. So there you have it. So with that, I think without further ado, we're going to jump on in to our review for Andor Season 2. I'm just calling this Arc 2. Arc 2 contained Episode 4, Ever Been to Gorman, Episode 5, I Have Friends Everywhere, and Episode 6, What a Festive Evening. I'm going to throw it over to Ben, because I know you were here last week, so what have your thoughts been on the show so far?
Yeah, for me, I think the show itself, the first arc, it opened well. The first episode actually is exactly what I was looking for with this series. Like I thought it was about probably an 8. it hit all the marks. The second episode, I thought it was just kind of whatever. Like the stuff on Yavin didn't like do it for me too much, just because it was just
Yeah, we talked about that. It was a little bit
yeah.
overdone. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like it was drawn out a
Yep.
little. So to me, that was kind of like a 6-ish. And then the third episode, I thought the entire like big stuff was unnecessary personally. Just because like I don't think that's needed in Star Wars. But hey, everybody has their opinions. But setting that aside, I thought the episode was like, see, that's the thing. Like, I don't think that was necessary. But if I set that aside and just view it as like the Empire, like doing bad things, whatever, etc., then it was an all right way to end the arc. But I still think the show needs more action overall. So, like for me, that first arc, it was mid to bad at best, or bad to mid at best. So yeah, that was kind of like my view on the first arc. And then getting into the second arc, I think it's trending in a better direction. I do think that, because we're getting into more of the like spy type of stuff, like that. That's been my like big criticism of the series as a whole. We're finally getting into that. Like, I liked the stuff with Cassian in this arc, where is going undercover as like a designer and all these things. Like, we'll break the whole episode down.
Oh yeah.
But I think the second arc was better than the first. I'll say that.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? It's like there should be a sense of build up of like, okay, we're getting closer to Rogue One. Things are going to heat up more. Things are not going to be able to be as nearly as slow, because things are going to be set in motion. We know there's like big plot points in Rebels and stuff that are going to be happening next week, that like all crap is going to break loose. We have literally 2 more weeks. So with that, I feel like the heavy lifting has been done. We're at the boiling point where stuff is going to explode essentially next week, or in the next couple of days here, literally, as we're recording this right on Sunday night. So yeah, no, I totally get it for where you're coming from with episode 3, season 2. I definitely knew that would be a big gripe for a lot of people, just because it's so far flung to happen in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think like the way me and Milton were talking about it was, if you put that moment in like something like, let's say, Mandalorian, yeah, it would be atrocious, and I would be complaining about it a lot. But I think with the subject matter that Andor deals with, and the way they portray the Empire and everything in that regard, like I give it a pass, because it's like, okay, this would kind of not like I'm for it or anything, but this would make sense in that kind of universe. You know what I mean?
Well, my thing is, I guess I view it this way. Like, it's just like, we don't want to get into whole this breakdown of the episode again, because you guys did that whole last week. But like, I guess my thing with it is, it's like, what slope are we going down here with Star Wars? Because say, okay, we have this. Okay, obviously, like, it was a bad scene in terms of what happened. But what's the next step? Like, I've heard folks talk about, well, this happens in other medium, like Game of Thrones. But what else also is in other things like Game of Thrones? Nudity. Are we going to have full-blown nude scenes in the next Star Wars project? Like, so that's the thing. Like, where does the slope stop here? And like, to me, like, those types of things, just because the media of today is changing, doesn't mean that is part of the DNA of Star Wars as a whole, for me personally.
Yeah.
So like, that's where I come from that angle of it, of like, I don't know, I just don't think that should be in Star Wars, just for many reasons. But yeah, like I said, we don't need to get into a whole discussion breakdown of all of that. And then like, I do have to like point out Tony Gilroy's comments. I didn't like his explanation for the sequence. I really like, that's another thing for another day, because I always harp on like how Star Wars creatives talk in the media, and like, he pretty much implied Bix needed to go through that to like find her character clarity. And to me, like I guess I got to say my piece on this. Like, I guess like to me, when it comes to Hollywood as a whole, I think like having female characters go through those types of situations is a very lazy way to have a female character go through hardship, because it's like, so wait, the only way we're going to have a female character go through hardship is have that potentially happen, versus like there's a lot of other bad things out there than just that, like a lot. So like to me, I just think it's like it was a lazy explanation by Tony Gilroy. But yeah, like I said, we don't need to get into a whole discussion about Bix, because like, you know, I'm sure we're going to be talking about her character quite a bit tonight as well, and I have some interesting predictions for her character specifically. So
Yeah, I could see those points being valid. I could see them being valid. My thought of why like Star Wars won't get any like darker than this, in a sense, is what they did with season one. Like the closest we've ever gotten to a sex scene in Star Wars was when Bix was like basically like she was putting on her jacket or something like that, like sitting on the side of a bed. And it was just like implied, like, oh yeah, like she just got up, or like maybe they did, her and Tim did something on Ferrex, but like that was in my eyes. I was like, okay, that's like the closest we're ever gonna get to like that. And then with the whole scene, and at the end of episode 7 with the or episode 3 with the officer, like there was like no nudity, there was like nothing gratuitous about that moment, and that's where I was like, okay, it's at least like. It's not like in your face, like, oh my gosh, this is like crazy. Like it was done in a way that was like not suggestive of anything like ridiculous. And when they pulled it off that way, I'm like, okay, that's why I was able to accept it a little bit easier. Just because they did it that way. And it's of course like this is still a Disney thing. And Milton was saying this earlier. About like, yeah, maybe they should have put like a disclaimer in the beginning of the episode, like this could be triggering for people or something.
I guess throw one more last week. Well, I guess something to throw out there, one more thing. Like, you know, we're talking about like the tone of this show, but the thing is, this is all supposed to be the same universe in theory. Like, you know, like Marvel, across the board, same universe in theory. So like, that means to me, if we get to the Mandalorian. Or let's say we get to the Mandalorian, like what, or Ahsoka season 2. What if something happens like this to Sabine? People would be going crazy because it doesn't fit the tone of the show. But the thing is, it's like the same universe. So to me, it's like you got to paint the brush. It's got to be, you know, you can't have one thing in the universe and then have something different and be like, well, we got to have a hard line of separation here, because it's like it's supposed to be the same universe. It's like, are we doing, you know, standalone like Robert Pattinson Batman's off to the side while we're doing something else with James Gunn, or are we in the same universe? Like what's going on here? Like is Andor truly a part of Star Wars, or is it its own separate thing? Because if what happens in Andor can't happen in The Mandalorian or vice versa, then I just think there's a disconnect. But that's just, I guess, my view on it. Like, I just think there should be more uniformity across the board creatively.
No, I disagree, actually. I feel like, well, first of all, this is going to end up being like a 45-minute conversation. It's fine. Like, you gave the Marvel thing, and my mind immediately went to Daredevil Born Again, man. I'm like, that might have not been the best comparison, because that is almost like its own universe with how gory and the strong language and the sex and torture of kids.
I have another example about that. You know, speaking of same universes, look at, and I just started rewatching it just because I love the show. But Battlestar Galactica, look at the movie compared to the show. It's all in the same universe. The movie was like an hour and a half long. The show was like 5 episodes. In the movie, there's a lot of nudity. Go back and rewatch that movie. Like, you see boobs, you see some frontal slots, and I'm thinking, wait, this is the same universe, and it was on the same network of sci-fi. And I'm like, oh yeah, they did show this. I forgot, and I was like, oh snap! Like, I didn't realize that they got away with showing that on Sci-Fi Channel, and that's within the same universe. And it's a grittier world, and it's not Star Wars per se, but it's still fantasy. it still was perceived as like, oh, like
Yep.
teenagers can watch this and young adults can watch this.
Mm.
So when I think, because like last week, like I said, there should have been a disclaimer. I think for that first piece, I was okay with how they shot it. You know, it was implied that he wanted to do something that was his intention, and they never went through with it. I think that was the best way to do it. Now, if they would have actually gone full blown, I think that would have been way too much for Star Wars. But I think how I said it, with this being a grittier part of the universe and of that world, in that continuity of like this ain't the golden age of the Republic anymore. This is the dirt and gritty empire building their like pretty much in full tilt. This makes sense for how people have lost their way and why this behavior of barbarism was acting out and people were doing what they wanted to do in the empire. So I get it. Did it need to be in it? No, I could have gone without it. Let's be real here, but I think the way he did it was fine. Now I do agree with you, Ben. Tony Gilroy be on his bullshit with his explanations. I think he
Yeah.
needs to stop that. I think he needs to have somewhat self awareness and just be like, hey, this is why we put it in this show. We're trying to get a character here. We're trying to progress the story here. We know Star Wars is going to change into a different viewpoint as the rebellion starts forming. I think if you would have put it that way, I think people could have understood it better. But I think with him trying to fight and trying to like dig in, it's like, okay, you're making it worse than what it needs to be.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the part that like triggered me even more than just the. Gosh, now I'm turning into a Twitter person getting triggered, but um, but I think that's the part that bothered me the most about the entire thing is like that was your creative process. Like you know that's like because he acknowledges in that big statement he released, you know, Bix's character went through a lot in the first season, with the torture and all that stuff, and then and he talked about her like basically coming off of her path and like her finding clarity through this trauma, and I'm like, so her getting like psychologically and potentially physically tortured in the first season and all the stuff she's been through isn't enough. Like this, like to me, it's just like I said, it's a very lazy explanation. And again, it just goes back to my point. I pound the table. Like these people that work at Star Wars just shouldn't talk to the media. Like that's just where I'm at with it. Um, but yeah, I mean, everybody has their opinions, and like I said, I personally don't think that should have been in Star Wars, but I see where people are coming from if they um like you guys didn't have a huge issue the way it was done. And that's the thing too, I will give them that. Like they didn't go full blown Game of Thrones with this, where it was like Daenerys and what's his name, Aquaman. They didn't go that route, so like that's good at least. But yeah, like so I just think there's that, and it's just different viewpoints.
So diving into these episodes for this week, I first want to start off by talking about something that me and Milton talked about last week, which was we know we got these 1 year jumps. So what's the transition going to be like? How is it going to feel like? Is it going to feel very seamless, even though there's literally a year gap between? I absolutely loved it because I think, catching up with Andor and Bix on their safe house in Coruscant was really neat because they're basically implying that there was like this other guy that they basically had to kill as an informant or something like that. Like that's what I love about Star Wars is a lot of times you have these gaps and there's like things implied, like that business on Caden Nemoidia, for instance, in Revenge of the Sith that Obi-Wan mentions when Anakin is bickering with him. And like here we have that in this arc of these different things that happened in between that year. And hey, maybe in the future we'll get like Alexander Freed or one of these well-established authors to give us that book that'll take us like that full year. That'd be pretty cool. But I feel like it was a well lived in universe when they were explaining like, oh, this happened, blah blah blah. But the character arcs themselves still carry over. Like the stuff with substance abuse. I take it, Ben, that she was taking some kind of drug because Luthen was talking to her like, "Are you okay?" Like he found like this vial that she was dropping into her mouth. Like it's something to help her cope with all this craziness that she was going through. So we still see like these characters continuing where they've been, as if it was like literally like the previous episode was like a week earlier, right? So what'd you think about the continuation with the separation of a year?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the time jump. I thought it felt pretty good. It didn't feel too jarring as I was wondering how it was going to go. I thought they did a good job of establishing that, or just like you said, for just showing they had like a little safe house settlement, whatever you want to call it. They're like a when you set the table like that, like someone's house, basically, like they've been there a while. So I think that was a good way of doing things to like also, of course, we know the time jump based on like the subtitle things, but also I think just visually, they set it up well, and also, like you said with Bix, like having substance abuse, and then like Luthen talking to her, like you mentioned about her, like what are you doing like here? So like I think they did it in a good way. And also, I think this is planting like that conversation with Luthen. It's planting the seeds of, to me, what's eventually going to happen to Bix. Probably not specifically. Like I'm not saying she's going to have an overdose or something, but I think there's eventually going to be like a hard conversation she has with Luthen or something down the road, and I think that's going to lead to like her fate. So I think this was a good starting block for pretty much the final run of her character, in my opinion.
And sticking with Andor and the Coruscant scenes with these guys in particular, I really enjoyed the beginning when, again, I love Andor for really fleshing out just like the mundane stuff of the Star Wars galaxy that we've never gotten a look at. For instance, they go to a Star Wars equivalent of a bodega in New York City, and they're just looking around for like different things. And on the StarWars.com article, like, the person that put this together spent like a month on this one little scene, like getting together all these different cool off-worldly looking artifacts to put in this little bodega. And the clerk there is asking, oh, what about this pepper? And he's like, oh, are you going to be able to handle like just like this mundane Star Wars stuff, which I know for some people it might take them out of it, but for me it actually enriches the universe, where it's like, okay, like we're so used to seeing Luke Skywalker, they're at the Mace Windu, they're at the Jedi Council on Coruscant, or they're at the senator apartment with Padme. Like, you don't get to see these little domiciles, and the safe house is like dirty, and Bix is talking about she's got to clean this place up, and Luthen came in there, and it's just a lot of fun stuff that I liked in this episode, and that's not even getting into the Gorman stuff.
Oh yeah. Like that's one thing. Like I'm not really a huge fan of this show at all, but that's one thing I can give it credit for. It's just like the little details like that, like you said, because when we're dealing with most of the movies, like it's all like galactic level or bigger scale, or like even in Solo's case, it's like a lot of moving action and stuff. So like this at least gives you kind of like the daily. A little bit of like the daily ins and outs of life, like, that's going on and whatnot. I mean, God, maybe the closest thing we've gotten to that is maybe some of the stuff of like in Kenobi walking through the shops and stuff or whatever, like something like that. But, yeah, so like, I really appreciate them adding these like little details like that. It makes it just a bit, I don't know, a bit more grounded, I guess.
Oh yeah. So one last thing about Bix. At the end of the episode, Milton, and I'm sorry because like this whole thing's gonna spoil you.
Go ahead.
Like I had like one of the most visceral reactions to Star Wars I've had in a long, long time, because we see Dr. Gorntz or whatever his name is. What's his name, Ben?
Yep.
The guy. I think
it was Gorst or Gorst or something.
Gorst, yeah, Gorst. He's it because they had talked about, oh, they're gonna mass produce the psychological terror things for the military now. Like I guess it was more like a prototype before. So somehow she gets in there and puts the thing on his head
Mhm.
and just completely like just immobilizes him. Then she puts her hood up like a badass and she's wearing Cassian's cloak.
Right.
Basically just pulls out a holdout blaster, blasts the Imperial officer as she's walking out of the building. Cassian walks up to her. It's in the preview. If you've probably seen this part in the trailer where like walks up to Cassian. Cassian pulls out the remote, doesn't even look back, and hits the trigger, and the whole place explodes. And they walk out. That's the end of the episode. And I was like, yes, revenge! Like all the crap she's been through. This guy's been haunting her memories because we get more crazy flashbacks in these 3 episodes of Dr. Gorst, you know. And it was just like so fulfilling to see her finally kind of get that resolution that she's, you know, needed for this amount of time. And it's like there's also stuff like insinuated with Luthen throughout this episode of like, is she really ready? Can we trust her? Like, and Cassian is like trying to protect her, and she's saying, no, I can go, because she's been staying in that apartment, and Cassian's been going on these missions, and she like really wants to help. So it's like, this to me is a very bright side for her because it cements her as like, she is a capable agent of the rebellion. And now I'm so intrigued to see like where she ends up next because she was able to just pull this off like it was nothing, you know?
Yeah, so I like I said, I've watched like recaps of these 3 episodes, so I know like pieces of it, and so I am familiar with what she did to this doctor. And like I said, I'm curious to go back to watch these episodes in the full context. But from what I gathered, it sounded like Cassian was very selfless to support Bix and what she needed to do to move forward with, you know, her trauma that she experienced with that doctor. And I was able to see in some clips online about what she did to him, and I'm curious to hear what he was listening to in that device to make him like, you know, react the way he was reacting because she went through a lot. We never got to. Did we ever hear what she heard in that sound system? Did we hear? Was it like screaming or something?
So basically, super quick on explanation on that. So basically, the drug they made was the Empire discovered this pheromone base or this toxin or whatever. I guess it'd be pheromone. But basically, like when these creatures, babies start to die, they release this pheromone, and then like the creature, like, you know, they hear that screaming from their kids, and the mother like freaks out or whatever, etc. It's something like that. So that's basically what that toxin does. It just like psychologically tortures you as if you're like basically the mother of the like the creatures or whatever.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just curious to see what they put him through, but I mean, we'll never know at this point, which is fine. But I'm glad that from what I've seen and what I was able to like, you know, hear about, also she took care of business. And I think for Cassian, again, I haven't seen it yet, but I think once I see it, I think he probably was like, listen, like this is for her. We have to get her right. I have to support her before you know I move on with what I need to do in this rebellion because. I mean, realistically, he's probably more loyal to her than he is to the rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah, I just hope she survives. You know, I really want to see that, but like, how does Cassian get through all of Rogue One without any thought of a love interest? Is my only concern.
Well, here's my question, Chris. So each arc, we've been having someone die, basically. So the thing is, I mean, I feel like Stellan Skarsgård is going to last probably till the final arc. My thing that I'm wondering is the way Luthen's conversation went with Cassian. Is it going to go? Are we going to like, you know, Tony Gilroy's gone bold on this series. Like I can, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, whatever, I can give him credit for going bold and doing stuff that it's going to get people talking. What would be more tragic than if Cassian, because Cassian really is for the rebel cause, you know, at this point in the time, or at this point in the show, what if he sides with Luthen, and what if he has to make like a tragic decision, and he has to be the one to take out Bix, and like, it's either going to be, I think these are the only two things. I think it's either Cassian's going to do it, or it's going to be Luthen, and Luthen's going to justify it by saying, hey, we had to do it for the cause, and then maybe that's how Luthen gets killed by Cassian. Because I think it's going to be something tied back to that conversation that Luthen and Cassian had, because Bix is starting to feel like the almost like the target on Luthen, like you said, like he's saying, can she handle it, et cetera, et cetera. Like, and I feel like with an extremist person like that, once they get it in their head that someone can't, he's probably never going to stop forgetting about that. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point. That's a good point. So sticking with Coruscant, we're gonna just go by planet by planet. I feel like it's the easiest way. So stepping into the shoes of Mon Mothma, real quick in the beginning, I think it was the beginning of the arc. She's going around the Senate asking for support for the Gorman cause, and I love this because as somebody that has read Alexander Freed's amazing novel called Mask of Fear, which is part one of the Reign of the Empire trilogy of books. She was doing that constantly, like getting support to go against the Emperor and all that stuff. And that book was like a year after, or like within the first couple months after Revenge of the Sith. So that reminded me of just of the book. Like, oh my gosh, like Alexander Freed must have gotten notes from Tony Gilroy and the team to be like, oh, put this in your book because we're gonna have it in the show. So I thought that was really cool. We don't get to see much of that in Star Wars, and this is a show to do it in because it is very much a heavy political drama. But then, and this is why Tony Gilroy and team do such a great job, Milton, every single last episode of every arc, the third episode of every arc, he has a way of just ratcheting up the tension between multiple arcs and intercutting them so expertly and deftly that I'm like, dude, like I am on the edge of my seat. And he had this going for what was happening on Gorman, but then what was also happening on Coruscant, because there's multiple things going on, which is great. There's a party thrown by Skaldin, who is like the guy that is funding the rebellion. That's like the mafiosa guy from Chandrila. Mm-hmm. And then you also have Clea that identified that Skaldin is like selling all his artifacts, and they bugged like one of his artifacts, and like they got to get that thing out of there because if they get it discovered, like they're gonna find out about the rebellion essentially if they trace this thing. So you have Luthen and Skaldin that have to show up there to get this bug out of this artifact. Meanwhile, Mon Mothma is there, and then frickin' director Krennic happens to be there. So it's like you have all these huge players. This reminds me a lot of Game of Thrones. It's like you have like all these huge players like in this situation where they're just like having this dialogue, and meanwhile like Clea is like talking to that one defector guy, something with an L.
Lonnie?
Lonnie, yeah. She's talking to Lonnie, like using him as like a shield from like the eyes of Krennic and stuff to like debug this thing. And it is like so stressful because those guys, and it's like literally like Luthen is talking to Krennic, and it's like nobody knows who each other. It's like it's absolutely like tense, absolutely tense. And it was really cool to see Clea get her hands dirty because she's always been all these episodes like at the home base, like surveilling the audio and everything. For her to be like on the mission to do this thing, and she's trying to be as calm and collective as she can. Meanwhile, it's like, oh shit, like there is the leader of the Empire almost like right there under our nose. Our whole situation can just go up in flames if we do not control this situation. So that to me was awesome.
Nice. No, I think that's why I think I like that's probably the best part of the show for me is seeing those type of interactions again. I'm looking forward to seeing Krennic interact with Mon Mothma and all the different senators and whatnot. So I'm excited that we've gotten him throughout these two arcs thus far. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with, I guess, like how the Empire starts discovering who's what and who's who.
Yeah, because basically Dedra Meero was put off of the Axis case, and in these episodes, like, there's still these other people that are working on the case, but like, he's basically gotten away. Like, he's kind of like almost off the radar at this point. So, getting into another rebel cell, this was something that we guessed, and it came true. Is we go to Dakar? Yes, the base that was in the Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi. Well, actually, yeah, it wasn't in the Rise of Skywalker. It was only in the Last Jedi and the Force Awakens. Anyway, it's their old Resistance base. We get to see that it was actually a Saul Guerrero's partisan base, so that was really cool. And we get Wilmon, and he's trying to he's basically tasked by Luthen Rail to show Saul how to like set off this like nuclear bomb thing, but it's super technical. And you got Saul Guerrero that is strong arming him, saying like, no, you're not leaving until you tell my guy how to do this thing on his own, to tell how to teach this guy. And it's like this really stressful moment because this guy just wants to go home, and he knows that Saul Guerrero is like this crazy extremist, so much to the point that Saul Guerrero actually just like straight up assassinates the other guy because he's like, oh, he's a traitor, and he just shoots him. Ben, was this guy even a traitor, or was Saul just bugging out? I mean, I don't even know.
No, I don't think he was, because like honestly, when that happened, I did rewind it. I rewound it, I guess I should say. Rewound it by a couple minutes just to double check to like see like if he was doing something. And I don't think he was. I just think it was Saul being crazy, because Saul also mentioned, what is it called? He like been inhaling, I think, Rhydonium. Yeah. He's been doing that, so like maybe that's like damaged his brain and like made him kind of, that's what has leads to him eventually becoming what he does in Rogue One. So maybe this is like really pushing him down that road of like, okay, starting to actually go like super crazy. But yeah, no, that was a pretty tense scene. And like you said, that Willman guy, like, he just wanted to like leave, and Saul's sitting there just like cackling about like, inhaling Rhydonium and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that was crazy because Milton, it shows like Saul just perfectly normal. And meanwhile, you have Willman with like this crazy like respirator device I've never seen before. But like Saul Guerrero, Forrest Whitaker, man, this guy always does one hell of a acting job. Like he just has this crazy monologue, and he's breathing normally. And meanwhile, like Willman gets inspired, and he's like, all right. And he takes off his thing, and he's like damn near like suffocating to death. Meanwhile, Saul Guerrero's just like perfectly fine. But yeah, like you said, Ben, it's like, I love how this is showing us the pieces of like what makes Saul Guerrero so crazy. Like, yeah, he's been inhaling this crazy stuff and he was talking about his sisters, a reference to Stila Guerrero, his sister at one point. So that was really cool, a really deep conversation.
So pretty much we were getting to see how he later gets on the breathing apparatus, in Rogue One, because he's sucking in all the fumes and
pretty much.
And his brain cells going nuts.
Yeah, pretty much, because he even mentions, Milton, like, when you're breathing that stuff in, you can feel like your insides burning and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
that makes sense.
Yeah. And the biggest part about this episode is the Gorman stuff. And we got Cyril Karn, we got Andor.
Hold on, I'm gonna stop you right there. Please tell me that Cyril does something in this episode.
Oh yeah, this is his character This is his character defining moment, because basically what happened. We know his purpose. Like they've been seeding this for like the longest game possible.
So Chris, before you go into that, Chris, I need to know one answer. Will I actually enjoy him in this episode?
I think you might actually, because he is. This is what Ben has been waiting for. This whole storyline is like between Andor and Cyril. It's like we're playing a game of double agents now. Like these are two spies on both sides. This is kind of like what the rebels and the Empire have always been built upon: espionage and spy networks. And basically, Cyril Karn has been tasked by Dedra to go and work at the Bureau of Standards on Gorman, which, according to his mother, is like a complete demotion from being on Coruscant. So it's like crazy, like 4D chess, because he's basically going and like trying to be obvious with like the rebel Gorman front to like get picked up, because they think that he could provide them information on what is happening with the Empire. So meanwhile, like he is purposely having Dedra, like, this is implied because I read a summary from StarWars.com, like he is like getting like this like sting, he's getting like a sting kind of operation done purposely on him in his offices, so all the people around him like can tell like he's in an uproar, like, oh yeah, he actually isn't the Empire, because he's having this crazy reaction to the ISB like raiding his place with the bug that was planted by one of these people. So like there's so much complexity, and I could see like this gets so complex that like I could see people getting, like, I was even getting a little confused. Just with like, okay, is he the one that's getting the ISB sent in, or did they actually just do this on themselves? Because like nobody else really should know what's happening with Gorman, because remember, everybody in that room in episode 1, nobody really knows about this besides the people in that room. So, to make a long and short of it, it's like basically Cyril is the double agent. He's infiltrated the Gorman front. He's providing information. But then remember this one, Ben. Dedra had this idea of creating a rebel cell purposely to like cause, I guess, sympathetic people of the Empire to be there, because like maybe the rebels would be too extreme, and then the people would have more sympathy for the Empire and they would invite them in open arms or something like that. So like that's what I mean. Like this is really good stuff, because it's like they're playing like 4D chess between Cyril Karn, and then Andor shows up, and Andor is like this Varian Sky disguise. He was like this designer, and he has this. He does a great job. This is how we know about Andor being a good officer. Lookalike in Rogue One. Like he's had experience being in disguises, being in these enemy territory and all this sort of thing. But we get to see him learning about the culture and whatnot, and the people aren't happy with Cassian. Or the leader of the Gorman front basically goes like, "You're not really a good revolutionary, are you?" So then that's when Andor replies back to Luthen, reports back to Luthen, and then Luthen sends in Val. And then Sint is there, and then they start like trying to plan this whole like thing with basically their first mission for the Gorman front. They're going to supervise it. They're not even giving weapons to the Gorman front, but what they're doing is they're actually going to raid like this transport that has weapons, and the whole thing backfires. And it's like there's a stray shot that goes off, and it ends up killing Cinta. And it's like this really just heartbreaking moment, because Cinta is like this hard-edged assassin. Like you would never think, Val would never think in 100 years that her significant other would be killed by a freaking idiot that doesn't know what he's doing, that shot this blaster bolt off and screwed up the entire operation because he was nervous. So then she's sitting there on this transport going, I'm not even gonna shed a tear. Meanwhile, the guy that shot her is like crying like a little baby because he killed somebody and he didn't mean to. And she's like literally saying, you're going to wear this skin the rest of your life. You're going to think about her death on your conscience. And that's going to be the worst thing that could be. Like, I'm not going to hurt you, because that's going to be even worse than physical harm, is the mental harm of you having to deal with this the rest of your life. And it was this, that's, I mean, this episode, or these episodes, were full of some of the best character acting and dialogue in Star Wars. I'll say it right now. It was like, damn, and that was like the whole summary of the episode. I didn't mean to summarize the whole episode, but I love that storyline so much that I'm gonna have to watch it like 3 or 4 more times to really like sink my teeth in on it, because there is a lot of depth, and it's like people wanted spy antics. This is it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I like I said, the second arc I think is definitely better than the first, just because it's getting to what the show was originally advertised as before the first season. Like I really did enjoy these aspects of it, because like you said, we're getting like the double agents from both sides. We're getting, all of these sorts of things versus, what we got before. And I really do appreciate how they're doing that. Especially like you said, the stuff with Cassie, and I liked that a lot. Him going undercover, as a designer like he was and whatnot. It's like that's kind of the type of thing I was looking for with this series personally, like, because you see that stuff in like I guess the biggest spy thing, James Bond, like you see him going in undercover, doing different things, like so like it's nice getting to see Cassian doing these sorts of things. So yeah, I thought it was really, really good how they did it. And like you mentioned with the stuff with like Dedra and Cyril, I think they've really made an intriguing storyline with them. I do think that is one takeaway, Milton, I came out of these 3 episodes with, though. I thought to myself, man, maybe like I think these are the episodes that Milton is like, okay, maybe not the other 15 episodes of the show. Maybe in these 3 episodes, Cyril actually works for him.
I appreciate that. Hopefully, I hopefully it works, because like I said, I thought last week Chris knows how I felt about him. He did nothing. Hell, his mom was more interesting than him. And Deidre, I mean, she's captivating when she's on the screen. But I'm curious to see how it plays out. So I'll definitely make a point to try to get to these episodes this week, and I'll report back. But it sounds like he's a part of something that he probably doesn't know about, I guess, the full picture.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he's going to be very integral to what the Empire, or I guess what Krennic is looking to do with Gorman. Now, do they mention the Gorman massacre, or at least hint to when it's coming?
So I had to bring that up. I heard about that before, I even seen the episodes. The cool thing about it is, Milton, you have a Gorman, I guess native, I guess you would say, a person that lived there. They were talking to Cassian, I think it was Cassian, but they were talking about how 16 years ago, before the events of this arc, so it would have been probably shortly after Revenge of the Sith, they actually canonized the Tarkin, Tarkin crushing 500 people with a Star Destroyer. They canonized that from Legends, actually, and put that in the show. And they talked about...
That's awesome.
Yep, they canonized it. So, like, the interesting part about all of this, though, that I was going to bring up to both you guys, is, like, in that version, that takes place 2 years before A New Hope. So we're probably going to be, the way this is trending, I think we're going to be getting on to, like, a Gorman Massacre #2, basically. Like, you have World War I, World War II. Like, I think we're going to get to a Gorman Massacre #2 is basically what we're building up to. But yeah, there was a couple different conversations actually throughout these episodes, Milton, where they mentioned the Tarkin stuff a couple times.
Yeah, going back to Cyril. one last thing about him. It was funny because he had reported back to Pendergast, like in the ISB headquarters, and it was just the three of them. It was just Dedra, him, and Pendergast, and Pendergast says a bunch of stuff and just leaves. And then Cyril's like, "This is the best day of my life." He literally says, like, "This is the best day of my life," because he got recognized by, like, the top brass of the Empire.
Right.
And then, but, like, you were leading on to this, and this could be a moment of contention for the character, right? It's like, he doesn't actually know what this is all about. Like, he is just doing this for Dedra because he, like, likes her and feels like she is, like, the woman for him, because he's all about, just like that kind of person, that personality type that she has. He likes that. And, could that potentially drive, like, a wedge for him, like, doing something against the Empire when he finds out he's been, like, goaded into this massacre? Because, like, you see, like, trailers of this, and it looks like he's on Gorman when this massacre is happening, and if he sees all this carnage, like, that might shell shock him and be like, "Oh God, I was actually responsible for this. Like, what the hell? I got manipulated." Like, how's he going to react to that? That could be huge for him. Maybe he even kills her. Who knows?
Yeah, because, I mean, that's kind of like, they're pretty much kind of like a fling or something. I mean, there's something going on there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was weird. Like, what happened when he got back to the apartment? She's like, turn the lights off.
Milton, this is the best part. Your boy Cyril is finally getting some loving. He actually it was implied. They didn't show anything at all. All they said was Cyril got back and she was there, and she's like, turn the lights off, and he was like, huh? And she, like, says it again, she's like, turn the lights off, and then it cuts.
I mean, Star Wars, people procreate too, so I get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta, get the swerve on. So, I'll give him props for at least, trying to make. I was shocked he made a move on her last year, so, or I guess 2 years ago when they hadn't made the show. So I was like, oh snap! But hey, good for him. As long as he's not being weird and he's out of his mom's basement, like, that's all I care about. But at least it sounds like he's getting some development. Not only he's getting some, but he's getting some development, character development, in this arc, which is nice. So
yeah. So I think it's as good as time as any to wrap up the discussion for this week. But obviously, once Milton watches the episodes, I'm sure we'll circle on back to some of these character moments and storylines and plots and provide a little bit more analysis and whatnot on them, especially as we learn more about the future. We could look back with bigger picture on the past. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this is an 8 out of 10 for me. This actually was a little less. I gave 8.5 for the first round. I just wanted a little bit more action. I know we talk about that a lot when it comes to Andor, and I know it's a political drama, but like I did not get the spectacle that I got from the TIE fighter chase in that first episode. I was hoping for something like that, but again, it's like just like a half point off for that for me. The numbers don't really matter, guys. I'm just trying to give my thoughts on a scale. It's just that's. But I mean, looking at the overall thoughts of the episodes, it's like I'd even talk about this, like the idea of like the production value of them building the set of Gorman. They literally created a brand new language from scratch that is a kind of it's spoken kind of like French, but it's like brand new vocabulary, everything. They got all French actors to play the Gorman characters, and like the architecture, the set design, the costumes, like this stuff is absolutely top tier Star Wars when it comes to just the work that the crew is putting on these sets and every other aspect. If this is not up for Academy Award, or I mean, it could be a movie, but if it's not up for an Emmy Award, then that's just insane for some of this stuff, because it's just absolutely beautiful to look at that, and the amount of care and world building, the world building that you could just look at and just get the idea for the history of this place just by looking at the sets is unbelievable. So like I feel like they stepped it up this week on the set design. Coruscant looks great as ever too, with the safe house and the gallery there, the party they were at, and all that sort of thing. Like the show is definitely never bad to look at all. Dialogue is great. Some of the best monologues. Great episode, absolute great episode. I'll throw it over to you, Ben.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's definitely a step up from last week overall, because we're getting into more of like the spy stuff and those sorts of things that I enjoy. I think the characters are progressing. They're progressing in a good way. Like Cassian, we're getting to see him like in the thick of it. We're getting to see like Bix's character moving forward. We're getting to see Luthen. Doing his thing, and obviously the bad guys' perspectives as well. So yeah, I think this episode, or these 3 episodes, did it better than last week. For me, this week is probably just a solid 7. I do think though, and I'm always the Andor hater, but like I harped on like action in the first season, but like objectively, I really do think these 3 episodes needed more action. I really do. Like, just like, I don't know, something maybe like someone gets busted and like they have to like do a back and forth shoot 'em up scene or something. I don't know. Like, I just think it needed maybe. It goes back to my season 1 critique. Like, we need like 30% more action during this arc, and it would be like probably closer to like a 9. So yeah, for me it's a 7. And I'm interested to see where it goes, because, we're in the back half of the season. I know one thing, guys, keep an eye out for, as well as, our listeners as well. I know a lot of the creatives and people they really liked the 8th episode of the season. So the second episode of this coming arc. So that's something to look out for.
Okay.
I know that was mentioned. So I don't know what about, but I know a lot of people talked about that.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do after this podcast, or at least sometime between now and on Tuesday night. I'm going to go ahead and watch that Rebels episode when they rescue
that's a good call.
Mon Mothma. So I think that should be the homework for everybody watching, listening, and those of us on the panel tonight is let's go ahead and watch that Mon Mothma episode, because I'm really curious to see, because they're going to have to connect that. She's going to have to make that speech again. In front of the Senate. We'll get the actual like live action version, not like the hologram version on the Ghosts or whatever it was. So that's going to be my homework for the week. But yeah, thanks for those good thoughts, Ben, and the analysis, and thanks for joining our conversation as well, Milton, on this. Looking forward to hearing again your thoughts on this coming up. But yeah, what a May the 4th podcast. That was really cool. This won't happen for a very, very long time. So it was cool to be able to record. I was probably going to do something YouTube related anyway, but it's like, well, we're already doing a podcast, so that counts, right? So there you go. Star Wars Day. Another one is in the books. Got to watch Star Wars today. Got to play a Star Wars game for at least a few minutes earlier with Fortnite. And here we are talking Star Wars on a podcast. So you gotta love it. As I mentioned off the top, I was actually a guest on Around the Galaxy with Pete and Nick over on that YouTube channel. Very greatly produced show that makes me look like a chump over here because these guys really put a lot of work, a lot of effort. They have their own custom songs and intros and everything else. And we had a little fun, like, sports center kind of around the horn is what Pete described it as, because I have no idea what any of that is. With Star Wars topics, we were having fun grading each other's responses to these different Star Wars topics. So that was a lot of good fun. So go ahead, subscribe, support the guys at Around the Galaxy. But that wasn't the only podcast I was on. I returned triumphantly back to the Star Wars Underworld over at the Tractor Beam. Me and Matthew Neugebauer are doing our damn best to try to catch up on the comics, because between me being gone, between me trying to catch up on the jet lag and all that sort of thing, we're pretty far behind on these comic book reviews. So we're doing our best to knock them out. So we started doing that over on Wednesday. We'll be back again this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern again on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. And of course on this channel, youtube.com/StarRaptor, I put up review for several Star Wars comics and things throughout the week. So go ahead and check them out and search up the podcast at RM Transmission on podcast services if you'd rather listen on the road, at the gym, or on a walk, or whatever it is you do. I will throw this back over to Milton. Thanks again for joining us. Really looking forward to next week already. It's always a fun time having us three here talking Star Wars. So tell the people out there, where can they find you on the internet? Where can they follow you, what you do, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Milton Weber 7, or no, it's Milton 7 Weber, or on Twitter at Milton Weber 7. Follow me on the social medias. I tend to be low key, funny, positive. I don't do no negative BS, so don't even try to bring it my way. Other than that, though, we can talk sports, Star Wars, or whatnot. But we appreciate you guys listening and watching. Hopefully, as Andor progresses, we get a little more action, but I do like what they're trying to do. I understand it. So hopefully we're able to get a significant climax in these final 6 episodes. I'm very hopeful to see where Andor ends compared to how it started.
There we go. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Milton. I think I'm excited to see where it ends. The back half of the show is going to really build up, I think. We're going to lead right up to Rogue One, so I think it's going to be interesting. But yeah, everyone can find me talking Star Wars or fitness or anything else at Real Ben Maynard on X or Instagram.
There you go, and you can follow me on Twitter X at StarRaptor for your latest on gaming, Star Wars, and more. So episode 194 is in the books. Getting ever so closer to that 200 episode, so pretty cool stuff there. So for Milton, for Ben, for Chris, aka Sarper, we hope you all had a great Star Wars day. May the 4th be with you, and may the Force be with you, and transmission.